What's up, Fragnatics? Where we talk all things fragrances, and I'm here to help you find the right fragrance to buy. Now, in this series, we're gonna be reviewing 20 plus fragrances, guys. Yeah, that's right. I have around 25 or more fragrances, and I'm gonna be reviewing almost all of them in this series. And essentially, right, we're gonna be talking about the smell, right? The chemical breakdown. What are the top notes? What are the dry down, right? We're also gonna be going over the performance, the projection, right? How loud is it, right? How expensive is it? The price point. Some fragrances are not worth the price, but some are, even though they could be going for 400, maybe it's that good. And I'm telling you, you should get it. You try to save up for it, right? Like something like this, if it's like $500, it's a big investment, right, of money. And you really need to know exactly what you're buying before you actually purchase it. And that's what I'm gonna help you with. Now, for the first fragrance I'll be reviewing for the series, we'll be looking at an absolute bomb of a fragrance, Bleu De Chanel Eau de Parfum, an absolute timeless classic in the fragrance world. And before jumping into how it smells, let's look at the presentation, shall we?
The bottle itself doesn't have much going on. It's quite simple, but that's kind of the charm of it, right? It has a really nice cap on the top with the Chanel logo.
It does come with a magnetic cap, as you can see, and it clicks very nicely into place in such a satisfying manner. I mean, just listen to this. Ooh, ooh. It's super satisfying to put back in on. I feel like that's part of their marketing tactics for you to open it and use it more. So next thing, we're gonna rate the atomizer, right? Atomizer is a pretty important part of the fragrance. It's how well it spreads, you know. You don't want some squirt gun that like wastes and just like squirts on your skin. You want something that sprays very nicely, lots of volume, right? Lots of areas so you don't miss, right? So let's check it out. All right, I'll go ahead and waste a couple sprays for the atomizer test. Here we go. Ooh. Pretty good, right? A lot of volume, and honestly, I wouldn't expect less from such a high-end designer brand like Chanel. A lot of their fragrances, like Allure Homme Sport Extreme, have such amazing atomizers. They're not pressurized even, they're just really good, right? And it feels so satisfying to press on it, so.
All right, so let's break down the scent profile of Bleu de Chanel. The main accords are citruses, ambers, and woods. This is an incredibly complex fragrance, especially in the area of blue freshies, right? This is kind of the same grouping as YSLY, Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue, those type of fragrances. And I think this one stands out because of how many different notes are in the top and the base. And we'll get into that. All right, guys, let's look at this insane note pyramid here taken from Fragrantica. The top notes have grapefruit, lemon, mint, pink pepper, bergamot, aldehydes, and coriander. But the main ones that I pick up from my nose is just the grapefruit, the pink pepper, bergamot, and aldehydes. In the middle notes, I really like the ginger and nutmeg. I don't really smell the jasmine as much, but I guess some people might, some people don't. The base, we have incense, amber, cedar, sandalwood, patchouli, amberwood, and labdamen, right? This is really what gives that woody base that everyone loves in the dry down.
Well, what matters more to me is how this actually smells like, right? We can talk about the note breakdown, we can analyze the different chemicals, but why does that matter if this thing doesn't even smell good, right? So let's test that out. I'll do a couple sprays on my forearm. Ooh, good atomizer, as we announced before. Yeah, so when you're spraying fragrances, this is a general tip for all of you guys. You don't want to smell it straight off rip, right? You want to let it simmer down, you know, like maybe 10 seconds, right? Because what happens is you'll be smelling straight alcohol. Like it smells like I spilled beer on my forearm. Not that I would know what that smells like, but yeah, anyways, we're getting hit with the blast of citruses, right? The freshness that comes from the grapefruit, the lemon, and mainly the aldehyde, which is very important and common fragrance ingredient, known for their ability to provide like a soapy, clean, and a fresh smell. So it's used in so many different blue fresh fragrances, right? It's used in YSL, it's used in that Dolce & Gabbana, it's used in all the different ones, right? And it's very apparent here, but it doesn't make it too similar, right? It doesn't have a similar DNA to any other freshie. It's just Bleu de Chanel. That's what it is. It's its own thing. It's very unique. It's a very unique take on these citruses. And yeah, that is kind of the top note. What I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna leave and wait for an hour to smell and describe to you guys about the dry down. So if you guys don't know, for those of you who are not insanely into fragrances, right? A lot of perfumes and fragrances smell very different when you compare it off the rip, right off the spray, versus after an hour or 2 hours, right? Some of them just die off completely after 2 hours, but not this one. We'll talk about that later. But yeah, so this is a very complex fragrance, and I'm excited to describe to you guys how different it is from the opening. Is it better? Is it worse? Right? I don't know. I'll let you guys know, right? I'll see you guys in an hour. All right, guys, it's been about an hour or so. And just smelling this thing, my God, it is so different, but not in a bad way, right? It's definitely simmered down. It's sitting a little closer to my skin. The projection isn't horrible, right? But as with every other fragrance, it'll definitely project less, right? Like the more you leave it on your skin. That's just common sense, right? So what's really interesting about the dry down here is that the citruses from the grapefruit note kind of like takes a backseat, right? And it allows for the more woody notes coming from the vetiver and the cedar wood to take control, to dominate the dry down here. And I think that it is a perfect dry down. Like, this is so good. Hot take, I think I like the dry down more than the opening. All right, so let's talk longevity. On my skin, this fragrance lasts and performs around 6 hours maximum, right? With the first 2 hours where it really shines the most, it's the loudest, it pulls the most compliments. And after that, when it enters dry down, it sits a bit closer to my skin, right? That's normal with every fragrance, right? We said that before, right? Now, it is important to now talk about skin complexity and skin chemistry and how it interacts with different fragrances. Everyone has different skin complexities, which allow for some fragrances to last longer and project more, but others maybe it's weaker, right? It has weaker performance, and you don't have control over that. Like, it's kind of decided when you were born, like your DNA, right? And this is why it's important to test your fragrances on your skin and not a tester strip. I get that it's kind of like, inconvenient to spray if you want to like test out like tens of different ones. You don't want to keep spraying your hands with different ones. But if you're really looking into one, for example, you just really want this Bleu De Chanel, don't spray it on a tester strip. Spray it on your hand, spray it on your forearm, wherever it is, as long as it's skin, right? And from there, then you can analyze, oh, how long does it last? Or how strong is it on my skin, right? Because I could give it to my friend and it could last like 10 hours with him. Who knows, right? It could smell much better on him. But for me, it's 6, and that's like perfectly fine, right? Everyone is, very different. But in general, I would say this lasts between 6 to 8 hours. For the most part. Some people, there are exceptions, as I said. And yeah.
So the reason Bleu de Chanel lasts quite long, especially for a freshie, is thanks to the chemical iso-E-super. So iso-E-super is a synthetic aroma molecule used in perfumery to create a subtle, woody, and musky scent. Iso-E-super is known for its versatility and its ability to enhance other fragrance ingredients, often used as a fixative to prolong the longevity of a fragrance on the skin, right? So many perfumers and fragrance houses incorporate this chemical into their formulations to add complexity and longevity to their fragrances. It's time to address the big elephant in the room, and that this stuff is not cheap whatsoever. Usually, for designer fragrances in this realm, you want to be looking at a range of like 80 to 130 max, but this is really pushing the boundaries. I mean, like the EDP concentration that I have goes for like 180, right? And if you're lucky to find it at discounters, maybe 150, right? If you're really lucky. And yeah, that's I guess one downside of this is like it's much more expensive than other designers.
All right, now moving on to the scoring category for this review of Bleu de Chanel. So in the scent profile, this gets an 8, a solid 8. I'm so confident about that number. It can't be lower because it's that good, but it can't be higher because it doesn't really push boundaries. As in, like, it's too safe. This formulation is very safe, very mass appealing, but that could also be a downside because that really limits it to how good it could actually be. For example, this niche brand Initio and their release of Side Effect, this stuff is masterful right here. It's not, it's not really like generic. This is very pushing the boundaries, and that's why it probably would get a 9 or a 10, right? Okay. Anyways, in terms of performance, giving this a 7. Definitely not bad at all. I get like 6 to 7 hours, which is very impressive considering the freshness of the top notes and when you compare it to the rival products. So yeah, that gets a 7. Projection, this gets a 7 as well. It's pretty loud, especially in the opening. Even in the dry down, it's not a skin scent yet, right? You can still be like in the vicinity to still smell the woody dry down, which is amazing, right? Now, price point is where this gets dragged down. It gets a 5, right? We talked about it. 180 for a designer freshie, not worth it, right? For some people, I think it's worth it. It's just that good, but 180 is out of a lot of people's budget, especially for like an everyday, designer fragrance. You really want to be spending 180 plus on more niche fragrances, right? And that's just how it is, but that's why it gets a 5. It's kind of overpriced. Now versatility gets a 10, bumping the average up again because we talked about this. You can use anywhere, school, work, at formal events, winter, summer, right? Any season, any occasion. This you can rock it 100%. Now, all right, after doing the math and calculations, we averaged out the category scores, and this averages out to 7.4 out of 10, which is very solid, right? Once you get 7 and up, that's when you enter the extremely good fragrances, in my opinion. People who tell you that this is like NPC fragrance, like this is too generic, don't listen to them, right? Like only like 10% of the people actually use cologne, and those who do, what percent of them use this specific one every day, right? The chances, really low. Like if someone tells you don't wear this, everyone wears it. A lot of people know it, right, and wear it, but it doesn't mean you should wear it. It's still really good. And I don't think that should take away from how wonderful and amazing this fragrance is. So there you go.